Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Strong Stoic Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Tumblin. And the word fate is an interesting one, isn't it? The cosmos has a way of making us succumb to this word that we call fate. This word gets tangly, though. Does this mean that we have no free will? Of course it doesn't. Of course we have some free will, right? However, that doesn't mean that we have complete control over our destiny. That's certainly true. We cannot choose which way life pushes us, but we can choose, fortunately, how we react to that. We can choose how we fall, meaning we can choose how to react to such a situation, to really any situation that life will throw at us. Sometimes these pushes take the form of accidents, of injuries, of screw-ups. So how should we best deal with such things? This podcast is part of the Walled Garden Podcast Network. Consider checking out thewalledgarden.com to know more. Also consider joining my Patreon where you can support me, your hopefully favorite podcaster. It's not expected, but it's deeply appreciated. You can join my Telegram group chat at the Strong Stoic channel chat, where you can engage with other Strong Stoics on the podcast episodes. And also my articles are on The Stoic Gym magazine and Medium. Finally, consider joining my Substack, where you can join my newsletter. You'll get the episodes emailed directly to your inbox every Tuesday and Thursday. Let's talk about fate and free will in Stoicism. The topic of fate and free will is very complicated in many ways. In fact, there are modern academics, Sam Harris being probably one of the more famous ones, that deem free will as really just being an illusion. It's not real. Certainly one could understand this perspective. What if you had no control at all over what you were going to do next? What if it was all just an illusion? What if you're simply on a train, a passenger on a train that is chugging along, you have no control, you simply must follow the tracks. But you trick yourself, like a child, into believing that you were actually steering and driving that train. It's something that's really worth thinking about for a while. That is, in a nutshell, what having no free will sounds like. It may seem in many ways like the idea of fate. Fate is often seen as this preordained path that the cosmos created for us, and that everything that happens is all part of a grand cosmic plan. You might hear some religious folks say God's plan. However, the Stoics viewed fate as a natural thing that exists in nature. That's what natural means, right? It isn't supernatural per se at all. There's this idea in science of cause and effect. This exists in nature. This isn't some voodoo stuff. Simply put, something happens that causes something else to happen. We can understand this concept with some simple examples. Let's go through a few. If you open a door really fast, it will produce wind on the other side of that door due to the pressure differentiation. The wind is the effect, and the cause is the door opening fast. Cause and effect. Here's another example. If you throw a rock into a pond, it'll create ripples in the surface of the water. So the cause is, you throwing the rock and it going down through the water, and then the effect is ripples. You can do that every time, and it should work out to being about the same. Of course, there's variations in how this is going to play out in the real world, but overall, you're going to see similarities in terms of the effect from the cause of dropping a rock into some water. Is that fate? It may not be in the way that most people think about fate, but it is in the way that the Stoics thought about fate, at least in some part. Now, let's take that and expand it into something a little more complicated, right? If you go out into the street and you call someone an idiot, the chances go up that you're going to start a fight with this person. The chances go up that that interaction that follows after you calling someone an idiot is not going to be a pro-social one. Cause, you are rude. Effect, they are rude back. In fact, in Newtonian physics, there's this Newton's third law, which states that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. It's something like this idea that exists in nature. The Christians may say that we reap what we sow, which is a Christian phrase that I particularly like. Of course, in Stoicism, we deem ourselves in complete control of how we react to all situations that life gives us. That is the whole ethos of the Stoic doctrine, the dichotomy of control. However, that doesn't mean that you can go do whatever you want and expect no consequences. This is a very important point. In other words, you can't be rude on the street to someone and then say, well, they're Stoic, so they should follow Stoic philosophy, therefore they're not going to, they shouldn't use what I did as a way to control their own actions, and they should take agency over their own life. No. Remember that you must first maximize your agency. Are you doing everything within your power to make this exchange pro-social? And then you get to use the excuse of it's outside of my control. In fact, this is the best way of understanding fate and free will in Stoicism. Fate is what all externals do. And free will is how you react to what those externals do. Here are some examples. Someone pushes you down physically. You get to decide how you land. You get to decide how you stand back up. And more importantly, you get to decide how you deal with that situation, how you let that affect your character, what actions you do following that. Here's another example. Your mother dies. That's fate. That's something that's definitely going to happen at some point. You get to decide how you plan the funeral, how you choose to remember her and honor her, and most importantly, how you let that affect your character. Are you going to use that to be depressed for the rest of your life, or are you going to grieve properly and then get on with life, which we all have to do? There's a scene in Way of the Peaceful Warrior, which is a book by Dan Millman. I reread it, and it's a wonderful book, and I've really been going over some of the lessons here. I brought it up a few times in recent episodes, but it really portrays this idea of fate and free will in Stoic philosophy. Dan was a gymnast, and a good one at that. He excelled in his sport, and he was on the national team in America. He met a sage. He named him Socrates, interestingly enough, who the Stoics also thought was a sage. They didn't say sage in the book, by the way. This is the term I give him because he was sort of this enlightened individual, so I would call him a sage. But Socrates basically was teaching him how to live. He was taking him on as a philosophical mentor or mentee, and most of his teachings were aligned with Stoicism. Not all, though, but most were aligned with Stoicism. Dan went home one day to visit his parents, and he was at his parents' house, and he saw his old motorcycle, and he got on the motorcycle and he went out for a ride. He ended up crashing and he almost killed himself. He went to the hospital, he broke his leg, and they worked on him, and long story short, he ended up with a broken leg with a metal rod through it. You can imagine how frustrated he was. So here we have this gymnast who's on top of the world. He's doing really well. He's going to school. He's competing at the highest level or close to the highest level, only to have a motorcycle accident. He goes through a bit of a bitter phase, angry at the world for the tragedy that befell him. But his mentor, Socrates, wasn't particularly fazed by it. He told him that he needed to continue his gymnastics training. A warrior doesn't give up what he loves, Dan. He brings the love to what he does. Dan pushes back, of course, stating that he has a steel rod in his leg. How am I supposed to continue my training as a gymnast when I have a steel rod in my leg? My leg is broken. Come on. And Socrates replied with a very stoic lesson. The accident is your training. One of the things that the Stoics got absolutely right, in my estimation, is the dogmatic focus on virtue as being the only good. What this means is that everything outside of who you are as a person is indifferent. It's neither good nor bad. Being a gymnast isn't good or bad. Being a good gymnast isn't good or bad. Winning competitions isn't good or bad. Losing competitions is not good or bad. Being a CEO is indifferent. It's not good, nor is it bad. Other people, external people, other than your own actions, that's not good or bad either. Getting that promotion, no, that too is indifferent. The death of your friend, yeah, guess what? The Stoics say that's indifferent too. And having a motorcycle accident, breaking your leg to the point where you have to put a steel rod through it, yeah, that's not really good or bad either in the Stoic sense. This is a very freeing mentality to have, even though initially it may cause you to really think about the philosophy. in a nutshell, for those of us who are seeking excellence and success in life, which is the only really way to live life, an episode coming on that in the new year, by the way, understand that attaining whatever your goal is simply indifferent. Isn't that interesting? Attaining whatever your goal is indifferent. Now, that isn't to say that you shouldn't strive for something, but it is to say that the singular focus of your life should be the process in and of itself. Let's take Dan's motorcycle accident as an example. So he had a goal. His goal was, I want to become a world-class gymnast. And he was doing really well, so he was quite along on that goal. He was well on his way to attaining it, but then the accident happened. He got set back, unfortunately. His leg was broken, and his chances of attaining that particular goal went way down. That's bad, right? Well, yeah, it's bad if your goal is to become a world-class gymnast. But if your goal was, say, a Stoic goal, then it wouldn't be to become a world-class gymnast per se. It would, in fact, be to become the most virtuous person you could be. We could also say that it would be to become the best gymnast that you could possibly be. Not the best gymnast, but the best gymnast that you could possibly be. That's another Stoic goal. Here's how you become successful in anything in life. You have a goal. You know where you are. Your strengths, your weaknesses, the good, the bad, the ugly. And you have a plan on how to get from where you are to where you want to go. What's in your control? Certainly not where you are. That's something that's in the present moment and is being dictated by your past experiences. It's being dictated by your genetics and many, many things that are outside of your control. You do have control over which goal you set. However, again, what that goal is exactly isn't really important to a Stoic. These worldly goals, which I would call them, such as becoming a top-level gymnast or becoming a CEO or being able to squat 500 pounds, whatever it is, these worldly goals, I'll call them, are simply mediums by which to attain our more important goal as a Stoic, to be a virtuous person. Your goal is to become a person of virtue. To do that, you must strive for excellence in something. To become strong, you must lift something, after all. Therefore, worldly goals are very important, but it doesn't really matter exactly what it is to a Stoic, because you are simply using that worldly goal to attain your spiritual goal of becoming virtuous. Now, that isn't to say that certain avenues are going to be better for you as an individual. So Dan, for example, he was naturally gravitating more towards being a gymnast. His, let's say, chances of becoming Stoic through becoming a gymnast as a goal is probably better for him, whereas for others it might be another sport, it might be powerlifting, it might be weightlifting, it might be, I don't know, becoming a CEO. It doesn't really matter. But at the end of the day, it's important to understand that it really doesn't matter exactly what it is, but it's kind of like a preferred and different thing where if you have a preference, and we all normally do, that's okay. It's okay to have a preference, and you can sort of go back to that and use that as the way to learn Stoicism. But to get back to those three things, okay, where you are going, and how you plan to get there. We've already established that where you are is not entirely up to you. Where you are going isn't really up to you either. It is peripherally speaking, meaning you can choose to become a gymnast, or you can choose to become a weightlifter or a CEO or whatever it is. You can strive for excellence in whatever avenue you want to. But if you adopt Stoicism, the goal is already defined for you, my friend. It's becoming a virtuous person. So really the deeper goal here is preordained. It's there for you. But how you achieve that is completely up to you. Therefore, the only thing that you truly have control over is your plan. It's how you get from where you are to where you are going. This is what is the most important thing. Truly the only important thing. What this looks like on a day-to-day basis is giving your full attention to whatever plan you have in place to get you from where you are to where you are going. It means being present and having faith in the plan. And that plan may need to be updated as you learn more. That is, you make the best possible plan that you can, and you understand that it isn't perfect and it needs to be updated regularly as you become more wise. But at the same time, you have to have full faith that the plan is actually going to work. Otherwise, it doesn't even have a chance of working. The update mechanism is part of the plan, and that is what we call logos. I'll dig deeper into that in a future episode, but for now, I want to highlight the main lesson of this episode. You can't control where you are. You have influence over where you are because where you are is a partial consequence of your previous decisions. However, at the end of the day, life can always throw you a wrench. In Dan's case, life threw him into a motorcycle accident. Where he was, in relationship to the goal he set, was drastically changed. Just like that. He went from a high-level athlete to someone who could barely walk in one very short moment. But what's the response? Remember, being a world-class gymnast was only the peripheral goal. And this is what Socrates, his mentor, the sage, was trying to teach him. His real goal was to become the best gymnast he could be, or become the best person he could be. That's why excellence and virtue are really the same thing. And what that means is that even though where he was changed dramatically in a moment, the process of getting better is still the same. That's logos. Make a plan. Be open to adjust it as you become more wise, and have faith each and every day that the plan is going to work. If you don't, the plan has no chance of working. So when Socrates said to Dan, "The accident is your training," this is what he meant. The accident happened. It's in the past. It's done. It's changed drastically where you are. And that's going to change the plan. But the road itself, the ethos of the road itself, hasn't changed. Have the humility to recognize and accept where you are right now, and then get back to the drawing board. Make a plan, be open to adjusting it as needed, and then have faith each and every day that the plan will work. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to support me, consider checking out my Instagram and Twitter and everywhere. If you like this episode in particular, consider leaving a rating and review. On Spotify would actually help me out quite a bit. If you're new here, episodes every Tuesday and Thursday. Not going to bug you guys anymore. Thanks again. Cheers. Until next time.